Hello guys, Hippopotamus here, and today this is going to be my second armor share build. This is my 2.0 variation of it, and has some differences and some similarities. We'll go through all that as we get to each thing, but let's just start the usual way and we'll go through the specialization. So a similarity here is that we're using the same specialization, we're just using the gunner, and there is again multiple reasons for this. Firstly is the riot foam grenade, because this will help us proc our backpack talent of perfect galvanize. In this case it's perfect version. It's just a second source of being able to proc the talent should we have no ammo for our shotgun or an emergency situation. Incessant killing enemies grants 10% armor on kill. We have stacked that up through using in-slot mods to help us gain just a tiny little bit more. But yeah, the armor on kill can be kind of useful because you can actually get kills with this build, especially if you're focusing on weaker enemies. The coupler is okay, it's not too bad, especially considering that the shotgun, the Scorpio, suffers from a reasonably slow reload, so every third reload is just going to be a little bit faster. The hardened armor kits are very, very good because obviously the 30% bonus armor that we'll receive is based off our base armor, and because we have 2.4 million in this case, 30% of 2.4 million is much more than a damage core build or a skill tier build, so we're going to actually feel some value from taking that. We don't use the Banshee Pulse in this build, we actually have something different, so worth shouting out there's a difference there. The supply line is also very useful again because we have low ammo reserves for the shotgun. You don't have near as many backup magazines as you do for other weapons, so this is just going to keep the Scorpio in play for longer and help us keep that debuff up for the teammates, and also proc galvanize on enemies when we do shoot them. Barrage can be sort of useful if we're going to chain kills on weaker enemies, but it's certainly not something that's going to help massively. Just note that it's there, it's okay. You can use it to chain kill smaller enemies. We also have emplacement, so remembering if we stand still for 1 second, we're going to gain 10% weapon handling, and that is accuracy, stability, reload speed, and swap speed. So for 1 second, if we stood still, those are all things that are going to help us. In this case, the only difference in the weapon tier branches that we have is just that we do have the shotgun, but in this case we are using an SMG rather than an assault rifle. Also honourable mention to the minigun, because obviously it really does help recover lost armour, and it also gives you bonus armour when you pull it out at first, so it can be quite useful. Just don't forget about it, it does actually do a good job of repairing your armour when you're low, and we do have lower armour regen on this particular build than the last one that we had. Okay, so let's go down to the range and take a look at the build. So to start with, I'm using a offhand weapon of Emmeline's Guard. This is because of what I mentioned earlier. We have much lower armor regeneration on this build than we did the last time, so we may need to use this in a pinch. We can definitely kill weaker enemies with this. I'll go through what this one has. This one has SMG damage, crit chance, and damage to targets out of cover. But in this case we have the perfect preservation talent. So what this is going to do is going to give us 15% armor over 5 seconds if we get a kill, and if we get a headshot kill then we're going to gain an extra 15% on top of that. This is quite handy because, as I said, you know, if we do lose a bit of armor, the regen on this build is pretty much half or less of what we had previously, so this is a way of sort of topping us up. And we do incorporate a headshot mod here, so we have the low reflex sight giving us 15% extra headshot damage, but it nerfs 25% optimal range. And to combat that, what we've done is we've just put the optimal range vent on there to give us a bit more range, so effectively we have 25% more range than what we normally would. This gun has actually taken a recent buff, so it's much stronger than what it used to be. The fire rate was around 800, it's now 1100, and has 50 rounds in the mag already to start off with, which was always a great feature of the weapon beforehand. So something that is definitely usable and serviceable when we're shooting at weaker enemies, but remember we need to pick those weaker enemies to get value out of this weapon. Shouldn't come as any surprise, we are using the Scorpio. This is one way of proccing our perfect galvanize, again the one of two ways that we have on this build alongside with our grenades. This one comes rolled with shotgun damage, damage to armor, and damage to targets out of cover. and we have the talent Septic Shock again on this. So effectively, it's just going to build stacks that last for 10 seconds. We can't add any additional stacks after we reach the max until the 10 seconds has run out, so worth noting. But what we're going to do is, if we add 2 stacks, it's going to poison. 4 stacks is going to disorientate and then proc galvanize. 6 stacks will proc galvanize if it's not already active, so worth noting, if it's not already active, we'll proc it, and then 9 basically will increase the damage to that target from all sources. So for all your teammates, they're going to gain 20% on that target that you've marked up there. So obviously we just need to remember that the duration is 10 seconds and we can't reproc disorient and shock while that window is sort of open, so we need to wait or shoot a different target. Feels like I say this every build, TDI card. Main reason is just because when I'm holding it, I can throw out the Reviver Hive and pick up a teammate and potentially keep the Hive for myself, or pick up 2 teammates if we're in a bit of trouble. Definitely something that, with a weapon here that I'm not using much, it brings a little bit more value to the build than just using some other pistol that doesn't really help that much at all. What I do want to say is I've got Preservation rolled on here, and I do have crit chance mods on here again. I could use headshot if I wanted to, but haven't chosen to do that. So this is all down to you what attachments you want to place in here. So onto the build, and I'm using 3 pieces of Aegis. Now 3 pieces of Aegis is, there is a specific reason for this. The main reason is the total armor. So the more armor we have, the more armor we share, and this is the only 3-piece that will give you 15% total armor. Now, I do know that you can wear 3 pieces of Golem and get 10%, and you could have more armor regeneration, a little bit of status effect for the shotgun. That would be absolutely fine if you want to do that. It would definitely give you more armor regen and keep you insulated in that way, much better. However, I've chosen just to try and get as much armor as I can. I'm trying to push that armor that I'm sharing to the max. So that's why I've chosen this, and I'm wearing 3 pieces of Aegis. So I not only gain 70% extra health, I gain that total armor. The health is not really super helpful. It's okay. It's definitely not the worst thing I could receive, but it really is that 3-piece that we're interested in, and we don't care so much for the 4-piece because the damage resistance is not really what we're looking for. We don't want resistance to damage. We're just trying to share bonus armor with our teammates and keep everybody else insulated as much as possible. So for all the pieces that I have of Aegis, they're just rolled with armor and armor regen with no surprise, and then also we have an insult mod here of armor on kill to synergize with the specialization. Again, we can just see that across the board. So I'll go through the brand set pieces, and to start with, we'll start with the chest because obviously this directly plays in, and again is an unmovable piece. We can't take anything else here because this is directly playing into the build and what we're trying to do. So it's the point man again. It just comes with total armor as Gilligard has 5% total armor and has armor, hazard protection, and armor regeneration, and it also has an armor on kill mod slotted in there just to give us that little boost towards our 10% that we get from the specialization. We also have the talent Perfect Vanguard. Deploying a shield makes it invulnerable for 5 seconds and also grants 50% of your armor as bonus armor to all other allies for 20 seconds with a cooldown of 25 seconds. So yeah, very useful. That's directly playing in 50% of our armor, 2.4, so that's 1.2 million every time we click the shield open, and we can apply that buff to our teammates. For the backpack, this time I hope I'm saying it correctly, it's the Lavoisier, and the reason I am using this is because of the talent. To get this bag rolled this way took me a long time. I'm going to say quite a lot of goes of countdown to get this, so this might be difficult to get rolled in this way, so I just want to put that out there to start off with. Status effect is definitely going to help 2 things. That is going to help with our grenades, riot foam grenades, because that will give them more status effect to slow them down for longer, and it also helps with the status effects off the Scorpio shotgun. So definitely not a waste taking the electric brand here, but we could definitely get better things, but it's definitely not also a waste. So the main reason I'm taking this is just because of the perfect galvanize, and in this case this synergizes really well with the chest because it's also going to give us the other 50% of bonus armor that we're going to proc, and also give us much more range when we do proc it. So let's go through it. Perfect galvanize: apply a blind, ensnare, confuse or shock to an enemy, grants 50% of your armor as bonus armor to your allies within 30 meters. So you and your allies within 30 meters for 10 seconds. So really useful. It's going to give you 50% of your armor, and it's also going to give our allies 50%. And we can keep proccing this every 10 seconds. So extremely useful for mitigating any kind of downtime that we may have with Vanguard. So for our last piece, we've just gone for a piece of Usina Jetica. And the reason why we're doing that is, again, is the total armor. So we've taken armor regen, and hazard protection. We can go through all this when we get to the stat sheet, why we've taken these roles here. But we'll see why and what we've got from doing that. Also, just a quick mention. I think I mentioned this in the last video, but I just want to mention it here again. With Vanguard, when you do deploy it, if you're with 4 teammates or less, you don't get the benefit from having it yourself. You only deploy it to teammates. If you are in modes where you have 4+ players, so things like raids or countdown, you actually give yourself the bonus. So it's possible to get 100% of your armor, double your armor effectively between the two talents if you're in certain game modes. So just leave that there and leave that some food for thought. In this case, we are using the Reviver Hive. As I said, we have much less regen, and I feel that the survivability on this build is still good, but mistakes can happen, and sometimes you can just be too bullheaded and run in and charge in. So this is definitely going to give us that second lifeline, and the ability to pick up teammates that do something silly if they do something silly as well. Holding the pistol is going to give us 2 charges. An unnegotiable skill here is the shield, as we've said previously, and that is because obviously we are proccing Vanguard. We need the shield to do that, so we have a tier 6 shield which will help us protect ourselves. We also have the riot foam grenades as a second source of being able to proc the galvanized talent, so quite useful with that. What I'll do is I'll just check the range, just make sure we're on heroic. Let's just turn off the modifiers if they're on, which they're not. Excellent. All going quite well up to now. And we'll just hit the skill haste button to remove the skill haste so we can see accurate numbers on the stat sheet. In and out, and then when we go to the stat sheet, we're going to see the correct numbers and baselines. So I have perfect preservation on the Emmeline's Guard. We also have septic shock and preservation. For our weapon damages, they are obviously low. We have a little bit of extra headshot damage and maybe a little bit of extra range on the SMG. The shotgun is pretty much the same. And for weapon damages, unsurprisingly, are low. So talents, we're actually using Perfect Galvanize. That is a difference from last time where we had Galvanize and Perfect Vanguard. So last time we were sharing 90% of 2.3 million. In this case, we are sharing 100% of 2.4 million, with the potential to possibly go up to 2.5 with expertise if we put 30 ranks into our gear, if we so wish to. In this case, I don't have the resources or care to do that, but you can do that if you so wish. Brand sets, remember, we're wearing 3 pieces of Aegis, 1 piece of Electrique, 1 piece of Gila, and 1 piece of Usina Jetica, as we are chasing total armor at the stat to get as higher armor as possible. We are sat at 2.357 million armor, which means that we're rounded up to 2.4 on our stat sheet there, but effectively that's the number that we're sharing when we do share armor, and this number can raise quite significantly if we care to put ranks of expertise into our gear. I'm not going to do that in this case, I'm just leaving that alone. We do have a reasonable amount of armor on kill, nearly 300,000, so definitely something that we can utilize when we do kill an enemy. We are actually getting some benefit from that. We also have a very low amount of armor regen. I think we were 50 something, 6 maybe thousand last time. Unfortunately, we are only 29,000 this time, so we need to be a little bit more careful about what we're doing, and we can't just rush in like an armor regen build and run around in circles. That isn't going to work for us. We actually do have more health in this case, so if something bad does happen, we have the potential to maybe just run away and put a medkit on, but we just need to be still careful. It's not going to save you from standing in direct gunfire from multiple sources. You just need to be mindful about where you're standing when you do start tanking. And just to remember that we have rank 1000 in our wristwatch, so the disclaimer is here that if you don't have rank 1000 you may see different numbers, but this is what we have because we are at 1000. If you're at the same, you'll see the same numbers here. So again, we've got 40% into hazard protection. It's nearly 50%. It's useful. It's going to take the sting out of enemies stacking multiple damage sources on us, because obviously in the last division we had exotic damage resilience, and when you take EDR in the last game it did make you a little bit more tanky because you can't take as much damage from other things. Again, explosive resistance, just be mindful, you do take still quite a lot of damage from explosives, but if enemies are equipped with special rounds or there is hazards involved in the content that you're playing, this is just going to take the sting out of that just a little bit. So obviously we have the hive, and that has a low cooldown time. That's quite a long time, 163 seconds, but useful for saving your life. And we have the shield, and again it's nearly a 20-second wait for that shield to come back. So you need to be careful about making sure that the shield doesn't break when you're playing with it. Okay, so how to use the build is much the same as last time, although we don't have the gunner pulse. We have two ways of proccing perfect galvanized. The first way is through our grenades within snare, and already we can see that we get a much larger chunk of bonus armor for ourselves. So we'll just wait that out, and we will bring an enemy nice and close to us, and we'll say an elite, something like that. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and we see that we get galvanize. Obviously we can hit the target again just to make sure that that doesn't go away, and once our galvanize runs out, if we hit the target one more time and we shock, we can also proc galvanize again. Very unlikely to happen like that. You may need to move on to another target while this window here is active, but once it runs out we can then reapply the debuffs to the target, which help us. Remembering that clicking our shield and doing both is going to help the team a lot. It's 100% of your armor to your teammates. Now, what do I mean by weak enemies when we're going to use the regen? Obviously, I'm going to just show the regen as it is. We can see that it is almost pitiful. Really, it's just there to be a supplement to other ways of getting armor back. So those other ways of getting armor back are preservation. So if we click our shield open and then kill an enemy with a headshot, we can now see all of a sudden that our regen is much, much better. So this is one way that we can use to slow trickle it up. But if I try to use this against an armored target, we can see that we can do damage, but it's still going to take some time. So effectively what we need to do is choose our targets that we're going to use this skill on. I would very much suggest things like red enemies here that have got just a health bar, and just work on those first because we aren't burning through an armor bar first. Okay, that's one way of using things, or we can just weaken the enemy first, whatever you so choose. We do have the reviver hive, so if a teammate goes down we can hold the pistol, chuck the reviver hive down, pick that person up, run over, pick it up, and we still have one shot in the hive. Okay, with all that said, these are my two armor share builds. Please let me know in the comments which one your favourite is. I might put a poll up after this just to see what people think, see if people prefer one build or the other. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you the next time I post in a few days. Thanks guys.